Welcome everybody. My name's Scott Hebbard from Sparx Systems, and today we're going to be talking about editing dynamic documents using Enterprise Architect 13. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar today and hope that you enjoy the session. So for those of you that don't know me, my name's Scott Hebbard from Sparx Systems. I'm the Communications Manager here. Today we're going to watch a live stream on Sparx website, or you can watch it via the YouTube site. You'll be able to type questions to your host if you're signed in using Google account. In future we're looking at embedding some of that technology ourselves on the Sparx Systems website, so you don't need to sign in. As always, if you have any questions, please email those questions to webinar@sparxsystems.com. And if we can't follow, or if we can't answer all those questions live, we'll follow up offline. So, without further ado, what I might do is I might get stuck into our demonstration. So as I mentioned, today we're looking at editing dynamic documents using Enterprise Architect 13. So last week in the webinar I showed the document window and there are a few questions, so I thought I'd go into it in a bit more detail. On screen we have a traceability diagram. So here we have requirement number 19. You can see I can change the status, I can set the difficulty, the author, and I can provide details. The small little A on screen represents a linked document. And here's a copy of the linked document here with a nice cute little koala. You can see the document says it's an example for the webinar, and the purpose of this document is to illustrate how a linked document works. So at any time I can select the element, use the context menu to edit or create a linked document for any element. Now this is really good if you're dealing with requirements and you'd like to have a comprehensive document that describes that requirement in a great deal of detail. One of the advantages of using a linked document is that it allows you to include text and pictures and a range of other material. So we have our linked document on screen. So the next thing that I'd like to be able to do is I'd like to show you how you can view those linked documents using the document window. You'll notice that I also have a use case on screen. Use case once again has status, version, phase, priorities, and some notes associated with that element. Now rather than having to edit and open every element, you do have the ability to simply bring up the document window as I've shown on screen. Now if it's a little bit big, as you can see on screen, I can choose a custom zoom level, so I'm going to change it to 110%, and that makes it much easier to see. So you'll notice that the document window is available from the start ribbon, so it's under Windows there. It's nice and easy to find, and you can open it up and close it with a single click. Now you'll notice that I have the linked document window open. So the linked document window displays any linked documents that are associated with a particular element, which in this case I've shown you that requirement number 19 does have a linked document, and the picture of the koala in the linked document is now showing in the linked document tab of the document window. Now, in addition to being able to display linked documents, you'll see there's a couple of find items there. So I can say find linked elements in the model, and it will go through and look in the project to see if there are any linked documents. It also has a print function, so any of these reports I can print out to the printer straight away. So the next thing I want to look at is the dynamic document tab. So the dynamic document tab is our focus today, and the dynamic document tab allows you to instantly generate a document based on the contents of an element. So The dynamic document tab of the document window helps you to instantly generate a document on a selected element using one of a range of templates to immediately display the information you require in the most appropriate structure and format. The document can be printed, but it is not stored electronically. It is dynamically generated for the current element whenever you select the tab and whenever you change a template. You cannot edit the document contents in the document window, and that's why when I was making changes to the elements before, I brought up the properties window and made the changes to the element there. So the primary purpose of the document window is for documentation, so that you can produce documentation. Now, when I showcased this feature last week, there were many questions saying, well, how do you edit it? How can you change the color of the headings or the fonts, and how can I modify it so that it suits my needs? So that's what we're going to cover today. So you'll notice in this particular document you have the name of the requirement listed. You can see its stereotype. You can see that we can see its status, so it's approved and it's version 2.0. We then have the description, the manage inventory description, and underneath the link document is attached. If I select a different requirement, it automatically updates that dynamically. Now, when I click on the use case, you'll notice that the information that is presented on screen is quite different. So I have now, because I've selected a use case, rather than just showing the title and contents, it's also showing any external requirements, and underneath you'll see that there's a scenarios tab, so it's showing our basic path and our alternate path all within this document window. So something within an Enterprise Architect is rendering use cases in a different manner to that of requirements, so we'll talk about that too. Now, if I select a component, you can see it says it's a component, it's proposed, version 1, and it's got the name and notes. So every time I select a different element, it changes. Now, one of the great things about these reports is I can automatically export them to a PDF format or an RTF format, and so instantly create a report just by selecting on an element. So if you spend the time building your elements properly, it means you have automatic report generation. Now this is the next thing. You can see here that we have the ability to select a different dynamic document template, and there are a number of dynamic document templates that come with Enterprise Architect, such as DD testing, DD resource, DD details, DD basic, DD support. So I'm going to select DD relationships, and one of the great things about selecting relationships is it automatically shows any relationships for that particular element. So what we've covered so far is we've looked at the document window, we've looked at linked documents, dynamic documents, and we've shown how the dynamic document tab of the document window automatically instantly generates a document based on your selections. So now I'm going to switch and show you the resources window. So we saw a couple of templates there. Where are those templates located? Well, they're located under the document generation tab in the resources window, and there are a number of folders, and you can see here you've got dynamic document styles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my own dynamic document style, which will be available from that list. So I'm going to call it DD Scott Webinar Example, so that you can see that it hasn't been shipped with Enterprise Architect, and it's my example to illustrate how dynamic documents work. Now I've created a dynamic document, but as you can see, it's empty, it's blank. And a few other people asked the question last week, when I go to edit my dynamic style, it just gives me a blank box. How does that work? So it does give you a blank box, because all we're saying at the moment is that we have a dynamic style called DD Scott's Webinar Example, but it doesn't actually do anything yet. So in order to find out what we have to do, we can bring up the Enterprise Architect User Guide online. So going to Sparx Systems website, I looked for dynamic documents, and you can see here we have all of the different So all of the different templates that are available. So it says in this example, one template is defined to display information when the selected element is a use case, another for information from elements that are used by project support, and a third for information from elements used in a database engineering, and fourth as defined as default for information for any other kind of element. So you can see there's if you select a use case, for example, then it will use DD use case to render that element. If it's a change element, it'll use DD support, and a feature, an issue, and a requirement will all use support, including risk and task, and classes and other elements will bring up different items. So this is how Enterprise Architect decides how it's going to render the dynamic document based on your selection. Okay, so what we can do is we can simply copy some of the text here directly from the Enterprise Architect user guide, and we can bring it into Enterprise Architect. So I'm saying if we're doing a requirement, we're going to use DD support. So now this is the default behavior, so rather than using the default behavior, I can change this if I like. But we'll have a look at how it works. So now I can go select my style, and I'm going to select DD, Scott webinar example, and you can see it renders the requirement differently based on the standard template used for support. Now at any time I can go in and edit this, so rather than using the default, I'm going to bring up and show a DD basic. So now you'll notice that it's changed ever so slightly. If I select a use case, nothing shows up, and the reason is that nothing is defined under my DD Scott webinar example. So I'm going to edit that, and once again, if you can't remember the syntax that you need to use, simply go to the help page and you can copy and paste and put that directly into the document. So I'm just going to put in a carriage return, paste straight from the website, click OK. So now you can see that we use the DD use case example on screen. So you have your scenarios, your basic path, your alternate path, your title, your stereotype, and your notes all displayed on screen. So that's great for modifying and creating your own template, but what if you're not happy with these basic templates? So here's the basic template for DD Basic, so you can see that you have an element name, an element type, element stereotype, status, and a few other elements. The one that we're using right now is use case, so let's have them side by side so we can take a brief look. So you can see you've got your element name, which is displayed as managed titles. You've got your type, your element stereotype, your status, and your element version. You have your external requirements, your internal requirements all being displayed. So this one doesn't have any internal requirements, so that's left blank. Then you have your scenarios. So all of this is mapped out here using the template editor in Enterprise Architect. Now one of the great things about that is that it means that you can make changes to the template so that it suits your needs. So if your organization has a corporate style guideline and you'd like to use that, now the next part is very important. What I wanted to do is I wanted to override that particular element. So I right clicked and used the context menu and I selected override. Now you'll notice down under user templates, under dynamic, there is now DD use case. So we have now created our own override, which is a user based template based on DD use case. So we can now edit that and make changes to it. So I'm going to close down the system template, open up the overridden template that we have here, and I'm going to make changes. So I'm just going to close the document window for a moment so you can focus on how I'm going to change the template. So First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the heading and I'm going to change the font and color, and that way it'll make a bit of a stark difference and you'll be able to see the changes on screen. So I'm going to make it a kind of blue. I've increased the font size slightly, and I really like to have the element type, the element status, and stereotype all on separate lines, and I don't like the color, so I'm going to change that color to green and see what that looks like. And it will look terrible, but I'm going to demonstrate how you can make changes quick and easily. And I'm just going to put a bit of text here that say the notes appear below, so that you're actually aware that you're looking at a note element. So now we've made all those changes. Always make sure you save. Bring up document window. We've selected an element here, so I'm going to the menu. I'm going to select my dynamic style, click OK, and you can see that it automatically updates. Now, looking at it, I hate the green. It's really hard to read, and I really need to make changes to that. But I'm much happier with the heading and the layout and the title and the fact that the notes are now clearly labeled. So I'm really happy with that, apart from the green text. So once again, all I do is I double click the DD use case, I highlight that text, and I can on the fly now just quickly make a change it to grey, increase the font size, and I can make any other changes that I like. So for example, I'm going to change the font there and make it a little bit bigger, size 16. I hit save, and you'll notice that all those changes are instantly updated in my document. So yeah, that's a really great, easy way to edit dynamic document templates, and it's quick, easy to do, and can help make sure that the documents adhere to your style guidelines. So now if I click on a requirement, for example, it's still just using the default behavior, so we can come back and change that as well. So if I click edit, rather than using a DD basic, we can well, that's what's currently being used, so we can edit that. So we go over to DD basic, and once again we open it up, and you can see that you've got your element name, your element type, your element stereotype, your status, and your element version. So if we want to make changes, once again we can close this down, we can right click and select override, and once you've done that, it automatically creates a new template down here under user templates, DD basic, and so once again we can make changes to this. So I'm going to change the font color, I'm going to change the font size, and put some of the elements on separate lines so that it looks a bit neater. So that's how easy it is to create an override to one of the system behaviors to make changes so that it adheres to your company's style guide and your corporate style guide. You can change color, you can change font size, you can insert images. Obviously, the more energy and effort you put into your template, the more that it has to render, so it might take a little bit of time. So you wouldn't want to put in too many intensive graphics and things like that. But now, looking at our document with our linked document, we've now changed the font so it renders use cases and requirements based on our particular requirements. Not only can you override, but you can even right click and select copy to create a copy of one of the templates. So it automatically brings up the new document window. You're going to copy the template DD basic. It's a standard template type. And so now all we need to do is add our own name. So I'm going to create my own dynamic document template, and I'm just going to call it DD Scott, and click OK. So now you can see DD Scott down under the user templates has the template written here, and I can go and make changes to DD Scott. So for example, I can change a font, and I can insert images, and I can make changes to the font color and the font size and the type of font that I'm using so that it adheres to my company's corporate guidelines. So once I've made those changes, I can simply press save, and I've now created my own template. And I used DD Basic as a good starting point, so I don't have to reinvent the wheel, and it makes life much easier than writing a template from scratch. So I can bring up the document window now, and I can select my document, and I'm going to press edit, and now I'm going to, rather than use DD Basic whenever I see a requirement, I'm going to use my new template called DD Scott. So I'll click OK, and now you can see that it instantly updates and those changes appear on screen. So today we've looked at being able to override system templates. We've created our own, and you can quickly make changes, click save, and those changes are automatically updated in the document window. In addition to being able to put requirements on lines and things like that, you can also insert images. So I can bring up a window, find an image, so I put a Sparx logo in there, and now that appears on my report. So this is a really powerful, strong technique for being able to dynamically update and get reports on screen. So now what I'd like to do is I'd just like to open up for questions. So I'll have a look at the questions section. So can you use fragments inside dynamic documents? So thank you, Horatio. Yes, you can. You certainly can use document fragments inside your dynamic documents, which gives you a great deal of flexibility and power with how that information is presented. So that's a great point. Someone else said, what version and edition of Enterprise Architect am I using? So I'm using build 1307, and I'm using the Ultimate Edition. And I will have to have a look at compare editions page, but I'm fairly certain that the document window is available in all editions of Enterprise Architect. And so just to wrap up, and then I'll just check if anyone else has any additional questions. So for more information on the release of the Enterprise Architect 13, you can go to sparksystems.com/EA13, where there are a number of videos. The webinar last week has been made available online on the Sparx Systems website. So if you simply go to sparksystems.com and you click on the resources tab, you can have a look at the library, and you can see that all of the videos from last week are now available. There's also hundreds of hours of videos on how to use Enterprise Architect available on the website. And so we have another question asking about configuration available for Archimate. So you saw that I could simply state a requirement use case and select the template, and so you can do it with other model elements as well. So I will attempt to provide some examples in the Q&A when this gets published on the Sparx Systems website. So the next webinar that we have available will be in late November, and we'll look at how to install Enterprise Architect on a Linux operating system, and we'll also briefly showcase how to use the Enterprise Architect example model. So I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully within 1 to 2 weeks we'll try to get the dynamic documents up online. The model that I've used today is simply the EA example model, which ships with every copy of Enterprise Architect. So there's nothing really special in the model that I've shown today, and everybody has access to it. But generally I will try to make the files available that I've used in the webinar. Last week I had a shuttle launch example, so I have made that available online, and you can download that. So I'd like to thank everybody for your attention today, and look forward to seeing you all at a future webinar. And this webinar will be made available on the Sparx Systems website probably within 1 to 2 weeks' time. As always, if you have any suggestions for topics or how to make the webinars better, please email webinar@sparxsystems.com. So thank you very much for your attendance today, and look forward to hearing from you again soon. Thank you. Bye.